At the courthouse steps on a bright May morning, ICE Officer Daniel Martin straightened his crisp navy blue uniform, polished the badge at his chest one last time, and gripped a thick folder of documents packed with witness statements and stamp records, certain that today's hearing will confirm his carefully built case, unaware that a far more extraordinary truth waited just inside the courtroom doors. A small crowd of reporters gathered behind the velvet rope, cameras clicking and voices hushed, as they sensed a dramatic showdown was about to unfold, while across the marble courtyard stood the tall Latina woman with dark hair pulled into a neat bun, her posture calm and unyielding as she held a weathered briefcase with both hands. Officer Martin marched into the grand chamber, where sunlight streamed through tall arched windows and cast golden patterns on the polished wood floor, his heart pounding in anticipation as he approached the judge's bench, imagining the gavel slam in his favor. The judge, a stern woman robed in black with silver hair swept into a tight bun, peered over her reading glasses with sharp eyes that missed nothing, her expression unreadable as she watched Officer Martin mount his case. He cleared his throat and began to speak in a firm voice that echoed off the high ceiling, opening his folder wide to reveal immigration forms, official stamps, and sworn affidavits meant to prove the woman had entered the country illegally. Across the room, the woman sat motionless, her dark eyes following every motion, her calm exterior suggesting a confidence that unsettled Officer Martin more than any courtroom challenge he had faced before. He cited specific dates of alleged false statements made at entry points, read aloud statements from airport officials, and displayed maps marked with travel routes he insisted had no legal justification. The courtroom fell silent except for the faint scratch of the judge's pen as she took notes, her gaze shifting between the paperwork and the woman before her. When Martin paused to let his evidence sink in, he looked up expecting to see shock or fear, but instead the woman's steady gaze held something like amusement, or perhaps firm resolve. The judge leaned forward, voice calm but authoritative, and asked Officer Martin if he had uncovered any military records related to the woman's identity, a question that made him swallow hard. Officer Martin glanced at his lawyer, who shook his head slightly and whispered that they had found nothing, prompting the judge to turn her attention to the woman for an explanation. With a deliberate motion, the woman rose, placed her briefcase on the table, and unlocked its latches, revealing a sealed envelope stamped with an official naval insignia that caught every reporter's eye. Cameras flashed as the judge broke the seal and unfolded crisp documents bearing the letterhead United States Navy seal, including orders, service records, and photographs of the woman in uniform on bases around the world. Officer Martin's confident posture faltered as he watched the judge scan the pages, medals, commendations, mission briefs, all testifying to her high rank and specialized role in covert operations. The judge looked up and spoke softly but firmly. Would you care to explain the nature of these orders and why a high-ranking SEAL was traveling under a civilian alias? The woman met the judge's gaze, her voice clear and unwavering as she described secret assignments that required her to move through ports and airports without revealing her true identity, orders approved by national security authorities. Each word she spoke carried the weight of service and sacrifice, detailing rescue missions, intelligence gathering, and protective operations that had saved lives and upheld America's safety. Officer Martin felt a surge of shame he could not hide, remembering how he had brushed aside any possibility of hidden truths while building his case on immigration records alone. The judge directed her clerk to make copies of every page and requested a private session to review the sensitive paperwork, signaling that the public hearing would pause until after her review. In the judge's chambers, the woman spread out her full-service record across a side table, with every stamp and signature meticulously verified while Officer Martin stood by, unable to look her in the eye. She handed him a copy of her discharge papers marked Honorable Service, inviting him to read the bold print declaring her rank and the commendations she had earned. As he scanned the document, his cheeks burned with regret for having pursued a case without seeing beyond the surface. The judge explained that, under national security exemptions, the woman's service took precedence over standard immigration procedures, leading her to dismiss the charges that same afternoon. When they reconvened in the courtroom, the judge announced the remarkable decision in a voice that carried both authority and respect for the woman's sacrifices. Reporters erupted into whispered excitement, their pens and cameras capturing every reaction as Martin offered a heartfelt apology for his oversight. The woman accepted his apology with a gracious nod, thanking both him and the court for allowing her to reveal the truth of her service. She gathered her briefcase and stood, her composed figure glowing with quiet dignity as she prepared to leave the courtroom a free woman. Officer Martin watched her pass, reflecting on the lessons he had learned about assumptions, thoroughness, and respect for those who serve in ways beyond ordinary sight. As the doors closed behind her, The judge dismissed the remaining staff, her final words underscoring the need for improved training and cross-agency cooperation. Outside, the woman slipped into a waiting vehicle, presence drawing silent admiration from the onlookers who had witnessed her remarkable vindication. Officer Martin remained behind, debriefing with the judge and court officials on reforms that would prevent such errors in the future. News of the hearings spread quickly, with headlines celebrating the Navy SEAL who had stood before a judge to defend her honor and her country. Across social media, citizens praised her bravery and called for recognition of service members facing unique legal challenges. Officer Martin later led a training session at ICE headquarters, sharing the case's lessons and the importance of checking military records when assessing immigration matters. His presentation ended with a simple slide, "Always verify the full story," a motto he adopted as he vowed to approach every case with both diligence and humility. The woman returned to her naval duties at sea, where her teammates welcomed her back with respect and gratitude, aware of the public drama she had quietly resolved. From the deck of her ship, she gazed at the horizon, proud that truth and service had prevailed in a setting far removed from the battlefield. Back at ICE, Martin updated his department's protocols, ensuring that national security exemptions and service records would never be overlooked again. The surprising courtroom drama became a case study in law enforcement academies nationwide, illustrating the power of facts, respect, and open minds. And so the chapter closed not with a gavel condemning an innocent person, but with a quiet acknowledgement of her valor and a renewed promise to uphold justice with strength, compassion, and unwavering integrity. After the judge dismissed the charges and the courtroom doors swung open, the woman exhaled a quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her shoulders relaxing as she stepped onto the marble steps bathed in afternoon sunlight, feeling each ray like a warm reminder that truth and service had prevailed over misconception, none of which would have been possible without her steady nerves and unwavering confidence under pressure. Reporters swarmed around her as she descended into the courtyard, their cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward, but she paused with a gentle smile, raised a single hand in acknowledgement to the crowd, and calmly whispered, "I appreciate your interest, but I have nothing more to add," demonstrating the same grace and discipline that had carried her through secret missions far from home. ICE Officer Martin followed at a respectful distance, head lowered and mind racing, replaying every exchange in his head as he considered how easily he had overlooked a critical piece of evidence simply because he had never thought to check military records, a lesson he vowed he would pass on to every agent under his command. Onlookers spotted a small group of sympathizers holding handmade signs that read, "Thank you for your service and justice for the SEAL," and the woman paused to nod appreciatively before stepping into an unmarked black SUV that idled at the curb, tinted windows reflecting the bright sky above. As the vehicle pulled away, Officer Martin lingered on the steps, feeling a mix of regret and resolve stirring within him, knowing that this moment of personal humility would shape the way he approached every case for the rest of his career, blending diligence with respect for those who served. Moments later, the judge summoned him back into her chambers, not to chastise him but to personally commend his integrity in acknowledging the oversight and his eagerness to reform ICE procedures, illustrating that accountability and growth often stem from our largest mistakes. The judge explained new protocols requiring ICE agents to consult Department of Defense databases and liaise directly with military attaches in cases involving unidentified individuals claiming special status, protocols that would be incorporated into formal training manuals distributed next month. Officer Martin took diligent notes as she spoke, his pen scratching across the legal pad with renewed purpose, each guideline reminding him that the pursuit of justice demands both thorough investigation and open-mindedness when encountering extraordinary circumstances. News outlets picked up the story the next morning with headlines such as SEAL versus ICE, courtroom redemption, and officer's apology leads to policy overhaul, while social media feeds brimmed with messages of support for the Navy SEAL and calls for greater collaboration between law enforcement and military branches. The woman's commanding officer at the naval base shared a congratulatory bulletin on the official intranet, praising her composure and the positive impact her experience had on public perceptions of covert operations and legal processes, noting that real heroes sometimes navigate both battlefield dangers and civilian courtrooms. Fellow SEALs gathered in the briefing room later that evening to hear her first-hand account of the hearing, crowded around as she recounted the moment the judge questioned Officer Martin about her service record, each listener nodding in admiration at her ability to remain calm when her identity hung in the balance. She organized a detailed presentation for her team, displaying redacted mission briefs and declassified excerpts that illustrated why civilian cover was essential for certain assignments, while emphasizing the importance of clear communication channels with Homeland Security agencies to reduce future misunderstandings. Back at ICE headquarters, Martin stood before a full assembly of agents and legal advisors, passionately describing how he had overlooked sealed military orders and how his department would now implement joint training sessions with military liaison officers to ensure no innocent service member would face similar accusations again. Supervisors commended his bravery in admitting error, and they tasked him with drafting a formal memorandum of understanding between ICE and the Department of Defense, outlining the chain of command and data sharing procedures for cases involving national security exemptions. Over the following week, ICE agents attended a series of workshops led by military legal experts, complete with live demonstrations on recognizing service insignia, verifying rank through secure channels, and understanding the nuances of classified mission cover stories. During one such workshop, the woman joined via secure video feed from her ship at sea, sharing personal anecdotes about how quick identification and respect for her cover had prevented international incidents and saved lives during critical operations. Her presence on the screen commanded instant attention as she spoke about the key role of trust between civilian agencies and military personnel, urging agents to see beyond paperwork and remember the human lives behind every document. Questions poured in from ICE attendees, some curious about Navy jargon, others concerned about balancing secrecy with legal transparency, and she answered each with the same precision and clarity that had defined her courtroom testimony. By the workshop's end, agents reported feeling more confident in their ability to handle sensitive cases, citing real-world examples of how simple misunderstandings could have dire consequences if not addressed through proper channels. Meanwhile, the woman prepared for her next covert assignment, updating her travel crypto ID and coordinating with intelligence officers to include a secure civilian liaison contact in case she was detained abroad. She meticulously packed her gear, combat boots, tactical watch, and a discreet civilian passport linked to her military service profile, aware that these precautions were now vital not just for her safety, but for preserving the integrity of joint operations. Before departing, she attended a brief ceremony on the base platform where the Secretary of the Navy personally awarded her an official commendation for her exemplary conduct under scrutiny, highlighting her courtroom victory as a testament to her unbroken dedication to duty. Officer Martin was invited to witness the ceremony, standing alongside base leadership as he received a certificate of appreciation for his role in improving interdepartmental cooperation, a symbolic gesture cementing a new era of mutual respect. At the podium, Martin spoke about lessons learned, how assumptions can cloud judgment, and how comprehensive research is essential when lives and reputations hang in the balance, earning warm applause from both military and law enforcement attendees. The woman accepted her medal with humility, reminding everyone that courage isn't just about facing enemy fire, but also about standing firm in court when one's honor is questioned, an idea that resonated deeply with all who attended. After the formalities, guests mingled under a canopy of flags representing each branch of service, exchanging stories about past cases, lessons learned, and hopes for future collaboration that would strengthen national security. Several months after the courtroom drama, the woman received a secure message on her tactical radio confirming that a joint ICE and Navy SEAL exercise would take place offshore near her current deployment zone, signaling that the breakthrough in cooperation was shifting from theory to real action. When she stepped onto the deck of the training vessel at dawn, the salty air brushed against her face, and she could see Officer Martin among the assembled agents. Their uniforms changed, but their respect for her unwavering confidence still shining in their attentive posture. The exercise began with a briefing where the woman described the importance of clear communication and rapid identification procedures, ensuring that agents from both sides understood how to verify credentials while maintaining operational security and respect for service protocols. ICE agents watched closely as she demonstrated how to inspect secure military IDs and mobile crypto passports, emphasizing that asking respectful questions and maintaining confidentiality were vital when handling classified personnel in civilian environments. Officer Martin nodded as he took notes on a waterproof tablet, thinking about how far he had come since that tense courtroom hearing, now feeling confident that he could guide his colleagues to avoid past mistakes. The woman then led the agents through simulated scenarios where a disguised SEAL will present civilian papers at a checkpoint, challenging the ICE team to detect anomalies without compromising the mission's secrecy. During one mock drill, an agent hesitated to ask follow-up questions about the traveler's background, and she stepped in calmly to coach him on respectful inquiry, reinforcing the need to balance security concerns with professional courtesy. As the sun rose higher, the training moved into live water exercises where small boats carried agents and SEALs through choppy waves to practice coordinated boarding operations and personnel checks under time pressure. Officer Martin felt his heart pump with excitement and nerves as he boarded the boat alongside the woman, each step echoing the balance between civilian law enforcement and military precision that they had worked so hard to achieve. Through the roar of churning water, she guided him on how to signal backup teams, use encrypted channels for verification, and maintain clear rules of engagement that honored both ICE protocols and SEAL operational guidelines. By midday, the teams gathered on the deck for a debrief, and the woman praised the agents for their progress, reminding them that every document represented a person with a unique story and deserving of respectful treatment. Officer Martin spoke up, thanking her for her guidance and acknowledging that his department had grown stronger because of her willingness to share her expertise and experiences. Later that evening, the convoy returned to port under a glowing sunset, and the woman watched from the bow as the waves reflected the golden light, feeling a sense of fulfillment knowing that her ordeal had helped create meaningful change. Back at the naval base the next morning, she briefed her commanding officer on lessons learned, recommending that future missions include designated liaison officers to coordinate with local law enforcement agencies anywhere operations took place. At ICE headquarters across the bay, Martin presented a full report on the exercise's outcomes, highlighting statistics that showed improved identification times, fewer procedural errors, and stronger interagency trust levels after the joint training. News outlets ran a feature story on the collaboration, featuring photographs of the SEAL in civilian attire working side by side with ICE agents and praising the novel approach to national security and immigration law enforcement. In her barracks, the woman pinned new ribbons to her uniform that reflected her training role, a symbol of how she balanced her duties in both covert operations and open cooperation with legal authorities. Officer Martin updated internal manuals to include case studies from the exercise, ensuring that future agents would learn from real events rather than abstract policies, cementing the partnership he once thought impossible. Following the positive outcome, another SEAL team reached out to Martin, inviting ICE representatives to participate in a mountain warfare simulation, further broadening the scope of joint initiatives beyond maritime operations. The woman volunteered to oversee the planning of these exercises, using her knowledge of varied terrains to design realistic scenarios that tested both physical endurance and procedural compliance under challenging conditions. Agents trekked through rocky passes and snowy slopes, carrying their identification documents in secure pouches, while the SEALs practiced covert movement and cover operations, each side learning to respect the other's expertise. During a particularly grueling drill, one agent slipped on ice and the woman launched into rapid first aid actions she had learned in field medicine courses, her calm efficiency underscoring why she was trusted with both weapons and lives. Officer Martin realized then that service could take many forms, from delivering accurate court testimony to applying pressure dressings in cold mountain air, all demanding the same discipline, empathy, and quick thinking. After weeks of exercises, they organized a public demonstration at a joint base open house, showing local families how ICE and military units could work together to keep communities safe while honoring individual rights and sacrifices. Children watched wide-eyed as agents and SEALs performed simulated rescue missions, complete with drone footage, night vision displays, and explanations from the woman herself about why civil-military cooperation mattered. Parents asked questions about immigration law and national defense, and Martin and the woman answered in plain language, making complex subjects understandable and showing how every citizen's safety relied on mutual respect and shared knowledge. The demonstration ended with applause and gratitude from the community, and the woman realized that the courtroom challenge had blossomed into a broader mission of education and outreach. In the months that followed, ICE held regular community workshops hosted by both law enforcement and military personnel, teaching civilians how to identify official procedures and report wrongdoing while appreciating the service of trained professionals. Officer Martin visited schools to talk about careers in public service, sharing his own story of how an honest mistake taught him the value of humility and how listening to experts from other fields had made him a better officer. The woman traveled during leave to attend these events in uniform, admired by students and teachers who saw in her a role model for courage, intelligence, and quiet strength beyond the battlefield. Together, they launched a partnership program that provided internships at ICE for military veterans, offering a path for them to continue serving their country through civilian roles that respected their sacrifices and skills. Many veterans signed up, eager to apply their leadership and discipline to new challenges, and ICE welcomed them with specialized training that combined legal knowledge with operational experience. A few months later, the woman received a secret radio message telling her that ICE and Navy SEAL teams would hold a joint training exercise on a ship near her base, with clear heads and open hearts. At sunrise, she climbed onto the ship's deck, salty air in her hair, and saw Officer Martin waiting in his uniform with a nod of respect. The two teams gathered around a table, covered with maps and gear, eager to learn from each other and build new friendships. She began the morning by showing how to check a service ID and read special codes to make sure someone was really a SEAL on a secret mission. ICE agents watched closely as she explained the steps one by one, using simple language and clear examples so everyone could follow along. Officer Martin took careful notes on a small tablet, remembering how he once ignored military records but now knew they were very important. Next, she led the group into drills on small boats, teaching how to board safely and ask questions politely to verify someone's role without slowing them down. The waves rocked the boats as SEALs and IC agents worked side by side, helping each other balance and stay steady in the churning water. She showed how to use a radio code to call for backup, and the agents practiced sending and receiving the right words in a calm voice. By midday, the teams returned to the ship's deck for a break, where she praised everyone for their hard work and clear thinking. Officer Martin spoke up and thanked her for sharing her skills, saying he had learned to always check all records and ask good questions. That afternoon, they spent time talking about new rules for how ICE and military units would work together in the future. Back at ICE headquarters, Martin wrote a report about the exercise, noting that checking service records now took minutes instead of days. He shared the report with other ICE teams and told them how the woman's lessons had made their work safer and faster. At the same time, the woman worked with her Navy team to add new training on making clear plans with other agencies. Soon, ICE and the Navy made a simple agreement saying they would share information when a service member had a special mission or a secret cover. They created a phone line that only certain agents and commanders could use to send quick messages about secret orders. Reports showed that few service members were held back or questioned after the new agreement started, and that made everyone feel safer. The woman got a medal at her base for helping set up the rules, and Officer Martin was praised at ICE headquarters for admitting his mistake and learning from it. Together, they wrote a short guide called Working Together, explaining step by step how to respect each other's jobs. The guide used simple words and pictures so new ICE agents and sailors could read it easily. Universities began to teach a class about civil and military friendship, using the guide as their main textbook. The woman and Officer Martin visited one of these classes at a college, talking to students about patience, respect, and checking facts. Students asked questions about how to solve problems when rules seemed to conflict, and both teachers gave clear, friendly answers. In the years that followed, ICE held open days where families could see how agents and SEALs trained together, with the woman showing her boat drills. Children watched wide-eyed when she demonstrated how to fast rope from a helicopter, and ICE agents talked about how they checked IDs and records. The event helped neighbors understand why both families and service members should be treated with respect and care. Officer Martin visited schools too, explaining how he learned to ask more questions and listen before deciding someone's fate. He shared his story of the courtroom mistake and how it led to the Navy SEAL's proof of service, reminding students that truth matters first. The woman and Martin also created a scholarship fund for children of service members and law officers who wanted to study public safety or law. Many young people received help to attend college, and some later joined ICE or the Navy because they were inspired by their story. On major holidays, the woman made sure her team sent holiday cards to ICE agents who helped during disasters, showing respect both ways. When a hurricane hit a coastal town, ICE agents and SEALs worked together in rescue boats, using their shared training to save families from flooded homes. News cameras filmed the teams in action, and the public saw how two different groups could work as one when people needed help. After the storm, the woman visited a recovery center to meet survivors and comfort them with a calm voice and a kind smile. Officer Martin helped families with legal papers for service members who had lost IDs, making the process quick so they could focus on safety. Over time, the simple guide Working Together was updated with new stories, lessons learned, and short checklists for each team to follow. Both ICE and the Navy made the guide required reading for all new agents and sailors before they went on real missions. Years later, leaders at both agencies said that the courtroom day was the start of a new tradition of respect, trust, and careful work. And so the woman and Officer Martin's partnership became a model for how kindness, honesty, and shared goals can build true friendships and keep everyone safe. A year after the courtroom case, both ICE and the Navy SEAL Command gathered to celebrate the success of their partnership and plan future operations together on a bright morning under fluttering flags and clear blue skies. They chose to return to the same coastal city where they first trained, inviting local law enforcement to join in a demonstration of their combined skills near the bustling harbor filled with fishing boats and cargo ships. The woman arrived in her uniform and shook hands with the ICE director, her medals reflecting the morning sun and reminding everyone of her brave service with the gentle hum of naval engines echoing in the background. Officer Martin followed her onto the stage and shared his own journey of understanding how important it is to check every source before making decisions, surrounded by cheering colleagues from both agencies. They set up training stations along the harbor docks, showing how to verify military credentials and handle paperwork smoothly under pressure, while banners promoting unity and respect hung overhead. Children from nearby schools watched in awe as agents and SEALs performed rescue drills, lowering stretchers from boats and pulling practice dummies to safety as onlookers watched with smiles and curiosity. During a demonstration, the woman explained how classified missions often require civilian cover stories and why agents must respect those protocols in a quiet moment of reflection before the festivities began. Martin added that his team now uses secure channels to confirm identities, speeding up the process and avoiding mistakes that might cost lives amid the scent of fresh salt air and rising dawnlight. Later that afternoon, the group gathered around a large map to simulate a search and rescue mission, coordinating between naval and ICE teams while local reporters captured the scene for news outlets. They practiced using walkie-talkies and encrypted radios, learning how to speak simple codes that could protect sensitive operation details with maps and charts spread across a sturdy wooden table. The local police chief watched closely and asked thoughtful questions, eager to adopt the new methods in his own precinct as the waves lapped softly against the dock's edge. As the sun set, the woman and Martin hosted a Q&A for community members, answering questions about national security and immigration law while curious children peered through safety barriers. Parents thanked them for helping keep families safe and for ensuring service members were not wrongly accused during missions, and the lighthouse beam shone faintly on the water's edge. In the speech that night, the ICE director announced new funding for interagency training programs based on the model they developed as seagulls circled overhead in the golden sunlight. The woman looked proud as she listened to the announcement, knowing her own courtroom stand had grown into something bigger, while nearby families applauded each successful drill. Officer Martin felt a sense of pride too, remembering the day he had learned a hard lesson that shaped his entire career, with the crisp air carrying the sound of distant horns. Over the next few weeks, articles appeared in newspapers and online news sites praising their teamwork and urging other agencies to follow suit, surrounded by mountains that rose proudly in the distance. The woman was invited to speak at a national security conference, where she described the importance of clear communication across agencies as flags of both services fluttered in a gentle breeze. She explained how errors can happen when people only check one set of records without asking questions or seeking expert help in a setting that blended military order with community warmth. Martin joined her on stage to talk about his change in perspective and how that moment of humility saved both time and resources, with a light breeze carrying fresh sea scents around them. They received a standing ovation from the audience, a sign that their message had reached hearts as well as minds as the sun dipped toward the horizon in a blaze of color. Back at the naval base, she briefed her fellow officers on how to support immigrant communities during deployments, while officers from different backgrounds shared hearty laughs. She emphasized kindness and respect, noting that understanding local laws can prevent conflicts and build trust under the watchful eye of the base's commanding officers. Meanwhile, ICE agents held workshops in several states to teach quick checks on service member credentials as training manuals lay open with highlighted notes. They created a simple handbook with examples and diagrams of official seals, stamps, and valid documents, with volunteers from the community offering helpful smiles. The handbook became so popular that other federal agencies asked for copies to use in their own training amid the soft chatter of families exploring the open house. One of the most visited pages showed how to contact the correct military offices for fast verification, while the smell of grilled food drifted from a nearby grill. Another section taught agents how to handle sensitive information without risking classified data leaks, as the school band played patriotic tunes in the background. The woman traveled to meet with these agencies, sharing stories from her career and advising on best practices, with friendly waves exchanged between civilians and officers. Officer Martin stayed busy coordinating schedules and making sure every office received updated copies of the handbook under a canopy of stars that twinkled above the dock. They also planned a joint exercise in a mountain environment to practice evacuations and high-altitude rescue operations, as the chilly night air reminded them of life at sea. SEALs taught rope work and navigation, while ICE agents showed how to manage paperwork even in harsh conditions, and the blue uniforms stood out against the sandy beach. The joint teams worked together for days, building shelters, cooking meals, and camping under the stars, with children giggling as they tried on oversized helmets. They learned that true teamwork requires both respect for rules and willingness to adapt when conditions change, while lessons of teamwork and respect filled each moment. Afterward, they hosted a community barbecue where families could meet both agents and servicemen in a friendly setting as the evening breeze whispered through anchored boats. Kids ran races and tried on uniforms, while parents talked with officers about career paths in service and law enforcement, with the last drill completed under fading daylight. At sunset, the woman and Martin raised flags for both ICE and the Navy, marking the end of another successful joint mission as parents and kids shared stories by lantern light. As they watched the final ceremony, they knew their work had made a real difference and built a stronger bond, while the gentle rocking of boats lulled them into calm. They promised to keep working together, reminding everyone that trust and respect are the true foundation of security, with hopes high for more missions that honored every story. And so their partnership continued to grow, inspiring others to see beyond paperwork and value each person's unique story, knowing that unity and understanding were their greatest strength. Months later, leaders in Washington celebrated with clear heads and open hearts as Congress passed a landmark law formalizing civil-military cooperation, establishing a national task force that united ICE agents, Navy SEALs, law enforcement officers, judges, and legal experts under one framework to ensure accurate verification of service credentials and protection of all civilians. The new task force rolled out detailed procedures requiring every ICE office in all 50 states and U.S. territories to consult Department of Defense databases, contact military liaison officers by secured channels, and verify any claimed military status before placing anyone under detention. Federal and state training academies added joint modules on reading encrypted identification codes, recognizing valid service seals and insignia, interpreting official stamps, and maintaining confidentiality for classified missions while upholding immigration law. Each ICE regional office set up a direct, encrypted hotline to military legal advisors who could answer credential questions within 24 hours, eliminating dangerous delays and protecting covert operations. A secure online portal allowed agents to upload digital scans of documents, receive instant verification flags, and access advisory notes from Navy legal teams regarding any unusual entries or cover story passports. Meanwhile, Navy SEAL training commands introduced workshops on basic immigration procedures, teaching operators how to carry civilian cover credentials correctly, share essential case numbers, and guide ICE agents through special operations protocols. Regular joint drills became standard practice, with ICE and SEAL teams conducting simulated rescue operations at airports, seaports, and remote border outposts to practice simultaneous screening and escort procedures under realistic conditions. Official reports showed a dramatic drop in wrongful holds on service members, faster processing times for legitimate travelers, and surging confidence among military personnel that ICE officers respected their special status. Law journals nationwide published articles praising the unified framework as a model for balancing national security with individual rights, calling it the gold standard of interagency cooperation. Universities launched interdisciplinary courses combining criminal justice, immigration law, and military studies, inviting frontline ICE officers and decorated SEAL veterans to teach from firsthand experiences. The woman returned to give guest lectures, sharing how her courtroom stand sparked systemic change and illustrating key lessons on humility, thorough investigation, and respect for specialized service roles. Officer Martin joined as a visiting instructor, describing how a single misstep taught him to seek every possible record, consult experts early, and treat every folder of papers as a human story. Together, they co-authored a teaching case study outlining the hearing, the legislative process, and best practices for preventing similar errors in future cases. Major law enforcement conferences featured panel sessions where ICE and military leaders dissected the case's turning points, debated evolving threats, and planned advanced exercises to integrate new technologies. Policymakers cited Joint Task Force data to secure additional funding for cross-agency training programs, secure communication networks, and shared intelligence platforms that bolstered both immigration enforcement and national defense. Inspired by the success, other branches of the armed forces sought similar partnerships, with Army intelligence, Air Force security, and Coast Guard units forging liaison agreements with federal law enforcement bodies. Internal audits by ICE's Inspector General showed near-perfect compliance with the new protocols, and any minor discrepancies were resolved immediately through military legal review. One bright spring morning, the woman led an international delegation at a coastal training base, demonstrating the shared procedures to officers from multiple allied nations eager to adopt the model. Officer Martin watched with pride as multinational teams performed synchronized boarding exercises, joint credential checks, and emergency evacuations under radio silence, all guided by the unified rules they had helped create. Legal scholars wrote books exploring the case's impact on civil-military relations, showing how a single courtroom misjudgment could trigger sweeping reforms that strengthened both justice and security. Veterans associations honored the woman and Officer Martin at national award ceremonies, recognizing their courage in transforming a conflict into cooperation that protected service members' rights. The framework extended to disaster response, where ICE and SEAL teams worked side by side in hurricane zones, verifying service member identities, processing evacuees, and coordinating relief efforts with local first responders. During a major flood, the joint teams used the same credential checks to ensure that both military medics and civilian volunteers could access secured areas and provide aid without bureaucratic delays. Human rights organizations praised the collaboration for respecting individual dignity, noting that clear procedures and mutual trust prevented rights violations even under extreme time pressure. In the cyber domain, a joint cybersecurity task force formed, combining ICE's document fraud experts with military cyber analysts to detect fake credentials, counter identity theft, and secure communication networks. A custom app was unveiled that let agents scan IDs, cross-reference secure databases, and flag any anomalies within seconds, all while maintaining end-to-end encryption. Public service announcements aired on TV and social media, teaching travelers and veterans how to carry the right papers, register their military status online, and communicate respectfully with law enforcement officers. Community outreach events invited families to explore joint training facilities, try safe drills, and speak directly with ICE agents and SEALs about how the new rules protected everyone. At one open house, the woman demonstrated how to inspect a cover passport, explained why civilian IDs were critical for certain missions, and showed local teens how teamwork kept their communities safer. Officer Martin hosted a workshop for parents on preparing service member travel, covering how to store important documents, set up emergency contacts, and liaise with both military and civilian authorities. A viral video series highlighted day-in-the-life stories of ICE officers and SEALs partnering on cases, reaching millions with positive messages about collaboration and shared purpose. A documentary special featured interviews with key participants, earning awards for its candid look at policy reform driven by real human experiences rather than abstract theory. Military academies added the Joint Task Force case study to their core programs, ensuring that future officers would learn the critical value of legal cooperation when operating in domestic or allied environments. Years after the legal reforms, the original Joint Training Guide was translated into multiple languages and used in international workshops to teach civil and military cooperation skills abroad. These events included large banners flying over city halls and official ceremonies in capitals under bright blue skies. Officers from partner countries traveled to the United States to observe exercises, and then return home to adapt the protocols to their own legal systems and security needs. Virtual classrooms connected ICE agents with allied military personnel through live video sessions, where they practiced document checks, radio codes, and respectful communication under expert guidance. They also shared personal experiences to strengthen bonds. Children in schools learn about the partnership during civics lessons using animated videos that showed the courtroom hearing, the rescue drills, and the community events. A global conference on security and justice invited the woman and Officer Martin to keynote a session titled Building Bridges Between Agencies, drawing attendees from every continent. Their speeches highlighted the power of listening to experts, verifying facts before acting, and valuing every person's story regardless of uniform or badge. In remote regions, mobile training units packed up equipment and manuals to bring workshops to small towns, teaching local law enforcement how to handle travelers with covert missions. These units used simple tents, portable projectors, and hands-on role plays so participants could learn by doing and ask direct questions in a supportive setting. A smartphone app developed under the program allowed users to scan ID barcodes, cross-reference global databases, and receive real-time advice from legal support teams. The app's clear interface used large icons and easy language, so new officers could learn quickly even under stressful conditions. It featured tutorial videos with simple voiceovers and colorful tutorials that explained each step clearly for users of all ages and backgrounds. Professional journals published case studies on the program's impact, highlighting how wrongful detentions dropped by 80% in participating regions. University researchers conducted surveys that showed improved trust between communities and security agencies when officers followed the joint guidelines. A short documentary aired on public broadcast channels, tracing the journey from the courtroom hearing to global policy changes and featuring interviews with trainees in distant villages. School exhibitions showcased posters of the program's milestones, from the sealed envelope to the mobile training tents, inspiring students to consider careers in service. At a global youth summit, students presented projects on how to improve cooperation between civil and military bodies, using virtual reality simulations and interactive demos. The women reviewed their proposals and offered feedback, encouraging them to think creatively and prioritize clear communication at every step. Officer Martin joined a student panel to discuss how legal tools and empathy work together to protect rights and save lives in complex situations. Nonprofit organizations partner with government agencies to fund scholarships for youth who wanted to study law enforcement, military science, or international relations. These scholarships helped young people from diverse backgrounds become the next generation of leaders who understood both legal systems and security demands. Alumni of the program form a global network, sharing best practices, hosting webinars, and mentoring newcomers to strengthen ties across borders. They organized annual meetups in major cities where they exchanged lessons, celebrated successes, and welcomed new members into their supportive community. A digital archive preserved the original documents, training videos, and personal testimonies, making the story accessible to future generations. Virtual reality tours recreated key moments, like the courtroom hearing and the boat exercises, so attendees could experience the events in immersive detail. Military academies and law schools awarded joint certificates to graduates who completed the program, marking their achievement with special seals on their diplomas. These graduates went on to serve in roles that required careful balance between security measures and respect for individual rights under national and international law. In some countries, retired SEALs and veteran ICE officers co-taught classes on the history of the partnership, sharing first-hand accounts of legal reforms and drills. Government agencies reported that the partnership model reduced operational friction in joint missions, from disaster relief to peacekeeping deployments. International peacekeeping forces incorporated the joint guidelines into their standard operating procedures, ensuring that each mission honored local laws and service protocols. In coastal communities worldwide, combined civil-military security teams patrolled ports, welcoming traders and travelers while verifying credentials smoothly. Local festivals featured demonstrations of rescue crafts and document inspections, entertaining visitors and educating them about the importance of clear protocols. On United Nations Observance Days, the story of the courtroom hearing was retold as an example of how one case can spark systemic change across nations. Teachers created role plays and mock trials that allowed students to experience decision-making, teamwork, and the value of clear communication firsthand in engaging classroom settings. Books and articles about the partnership appeared in multiple languages, celebrating the collaboration as a triumph of humility, justice, and cross-cultural respect. Interactive websites allowed users to explore maps of training sites, read personal stories, and test their knowledge through quizzes and scenario-based challenges. The woman and Officer Martin attended anniversary events in different countries, each time greeting old friends and reviewing new training materials. Across decades, the program evolved to address emerging technologies like drone delivery, biometric IDs, and secure digital credentials for service members. Each update reinforced the core values of thorough fact-finding, open communication, and respect for the human behind every document. In retirement, the woman and Martin co-wrote a memoir that shared their experiences, lessons, and hopes for the future of civil-military cooperation. The book became a favorite in training libraries and public book clubs, prompting discussions about justice, service, and the power of partnership. At a final global summit, representatives from thousands of agencies signed a charter to uphold the principles born from that courtroom day, promising to listen, learn, and work together always. They raised their hands in a united pledge to protect rights, strengthen security, and honor every person's story no matter where they served. The legacy of their teamwork lived on in every agency as a reminder that respect and responsibility are the keys to both security and justice. With each new challenge, they proved that trust, empathy, and careful inquiry could transform rules into bridges that connected communities, cultures, and agencies worldwide.